Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Great to be here with you. I'm your host, Simon Hill. I'm a qualified physiotherapist and nutritionist with an undergraduate science degree and a master's in the science of human nutrition. Today, I welcome Dr. Matthew Nagra and Tucker Goodrich for a conversation or debate on seed oils, specifically omega-6 rich seed oils. So it's been agreed that this will be an open conversational style debate. We've also set aside 5 minutes each for opening statements. Well, let's move into the opening statements.
Now, this is after they inappropriately excluded the largest trial, which showed harm. That's the Minnesota coronary experiment.
Tucker,
Only one study.
I might just interject to let you know it's nearly at 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I've got a timer in front of me. Only one study lowered linoleic acid and
Tucker,
only one study.
I might just interject to let you know it's nearly at 5 minutes.
Yes,
It's nearly at 5 minutes.
today oxidized LDL is
Tucker.
only. That is it.
But what would you need to see to change your view on this topic?
I would like to see some. I'd like to see some evidence.
Like any evidence?
We've got a lot of epidemiological data. A lot of it's based on really poor evidence, and a lot of it's not evidence at all.
What I want to point out, and if I can just share my screen here, what I want to point out is that we have multiple analyses actually looking at the concordance rate between epidemiology and randomized controlled trial data. So if it is the case that nutritional epidemiology is completely bunk, doesn't reflect or doesn't actually translate to outcomes whatsoever, but we have this comparison of over 950 randomized controlled trials, over 750 cohorts, assessing 97 diet disease outcomes, or if we limit to meta-analyses, 83 diet disease outcomes, and they're concordant in 69% of the cases. Clearly, it's right a lot more often than it's wrong. And similarly,
no, what that shows us is that it's always wrong.
I can show you if you want to look. I have the table or the figures here in the tables for intake in that trial. If it's easier for me to do that.
Yes, and that's a confounded study with ALA
but it's not.
intake well.
It's not, because the debate is on seed oils. These seed oils that they used, soybean, cottonseed, corn, sunflower, they are the seed oils that we're talking about. If you're saying that those seed oils are confounded by ALA, that they produce a beneficial effect, then you would have to accept that
corn oil has virtually no seed oil. It depends on which seed oil you're looking at.
Corn oil has virtually no seed oil. It depends on which seed oil you're looking at.
Now, human RCTs on fats and cardiovascular disease, there are actually only 3 that specifically look at an increase in linoleic acid. All 3 of them showed harm. Corn oil has virtually no seed oil. It depends on which seed oil you're looking at. We agreed to talk about high linoleic acid seed oils. Corn oil has virtually no seed oil. It depends on which seed oil you're looking at. We agreed to talk about high linoleic acid seed oils.
I'm not talking about the methodologies used in the epidemiology. What I'm talking about is the results that we get from epidemiology that are using these methods that you're saying don't work. They actually are concordant with the results we see from randomized controlled trials the majority of the time. That is what this says. And it's not the only analysis. I think that is really key. This is one analysis. Over 950 trials, over 750 cohorts. We have another analysis. This one was somewhat less. It was like 40-something diet disease outcomes, hundreds of cohorts in randomized controlled trials. I can't remember the exact number there. Then we have another one from Morthy, 34 associations. Again, 2/3 of the time, the results are concordant. And so this is even, let's say.
Yes, but unfortunately, the fact that they're concordant 2/3 of the time doesn't tell you anything about whether a specific study is going to, a specific epidemiological study is going to be validated in an RCT. And in this specific case, we have 3 RCTs that shows harm. So it's really irrelevant what the epidemiology says because we have the actual studies.
Well, no. So would you agree then, based on that, and we'll get to specific outcomes in a second here, but would you agree that the majority of the time randomized controlled trials nutritional epidemiology produces results that are concordant with randomized controlled trials?
It's irrelevant.
No, but that's can you just answer the question?
You're going off on a tangent.
It's not. I'm talking about the quality of if you agree that randomized controlled trials are the highest tier of evidence, as you said, human intervention trials, and epidemiology is concordant most of the time with randomized controlled trials. Like, all I'm asking is, do you agree with that statement?
It's an irrelevant statement.
It's just
I'm not
a question.
going to go down this tangent.
I mean, I don't. We agreed that we would answer questions.
Yeah, relevant questions. We also agreed we wouldn't go off on tangents. You know, I think it's fair to observe that epidemiology is unreliable and often produces unreliable outcomes. I mean,
but that's not what I'm asking here, Tucker. If we look at linoleic acid specifically, if you want to highlight that specific marker here, linoleic acid, cardiovascular mortality concordant between RCTs and epi, right there. So if you want to say that, we're not looking at the specific exposure of interest, we're seeing it right here in this paper. So again, I'll just ask.
But you're looking at studies here. I mean, they mentioned the Hooper paper. The Hooper paper incorrectly excluded the biggest linoleic acid RCT. So it's garbage data.
So we'll talk. I plan to talk about MCE, but again, my question is, and this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th time, is, do you agree, based on the data, the 3 analyses I just shared, and there's actually a 4th, but it was I figured it was too late to share it by the time I came across it. There are 3 analyses here, all showing that the majority of the time, nutritional epidemiology is concordant with the randomized controlled trial data. Do you agree with that? Is that just a simple yes or no?
No, I don't.
You don't? Well, then why do we see a 69% concordance consistently? Roughly, give or take a few percent, depending on the analysis. I'm just asking if the majority of the time we're looking at 87, if we look at the meta-analyses, or 83 or 97 diet disease outcomes. So many different exposures. In 69% of those cases, we're seeing concordance.
So what?
So my point
we're
is,
we're not discussing those cases. We're discussing one topic here.
I understand.
So let's focus our discussion on this particular topic.
No, but the problem is that you were essentially saying that nutritional epidemiology as a whole is not trustworthy, and you're carrying that over to the discussion of linoleic acid or vegetable oil.
So we're looking at the vast majority of data that we have in this topic is in this particular study. So excluding it for an arbitrary and invalid reason, as Hooper did, is, definitely an invalid adjustment, I think.
Okay, so I mean, based on their own power calculations, I've got here down at the right. This isn't something arbitrary. This is their own calculation. They require between 2,490 to 11,645 participants to obtain a 5-year significant different, and they needed a follow-up of at least 3.6 years. At the end of the trial, they had 2,000, or in this more recent analysis anyway, they had 2,355 participants, and they had 2.9 years average follow-up. So did they satisfy their own power calculations? But if we look at the original publication here, we see the lion's share of the events actually occurred within those first couple of years, especially the first year, as we see on this table on the left. Now, if we confine the results to people who remained on the diet for at least 2 years, we actually see a trend towards benefit in the highest risk group, the older age group, in the treatment group. As far as acute heart attack, sudden death, silent heart attack, 0 for men, 6 in the treatment group, 6 for men in the control group. For women, we have 1 versus 4. Same with all deaths, we see a trend. Now, none of these are statistically significant, but again, if you're not concerned with that, and if you think that the trends really matter, when we specifically look at people who remained on the diet for at least 2 years and had good adherence, and we look at the highest risk group, we actually see benefit from the treatment, right? Rather than just pulling them all together.
What are you doing here? You're doing a post hoc analysis.
This is from this isn't like some analysis I've done myself. This is from the original paper for the Minnesota Coronary Survey, which is where the MCE data came from.
Right, and they found a total harm.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about coronary heart disease.
That's the relevant outcome
to the debate on coronary heart disease.
The debate topic that has been agreed upon is it is more reasonable to believe that seed oils are beneficial rather than harmful for coronary heart disease risk. For coronary heart disease risk. I'll read that out again. It is more reasonable to believe that seed oils are beneficial rather than harmful for coronary heart disease risk.
Well, no, but we're talking about, the debate is specifically about heart disease. And even if we look at all-cause deaths here, and we look at the higher age group, again, we see a trend towards benefit in the treatment group. So even if I grant that in this debate we should at all focus on all-cause deaths, we still see a benefit in the treatment group compared to the control group.
Well, I'm suggesting that any intervention that results in a higher all-cause mortality is not an intervention I would like to take, regardless of what I die of.
Wait, where is the all-cause death finding that you're speaking about? Tucker, do you want to? You can point out to me where that all-cause finding is?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Dayton did show a bit of a benefit.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to. I was really confused. Okay. So yeah, then what would your objection be otherwise?
Dayton again was linoleic acid plus a blended intervention. The blended interventions
blended
all
in what
showed
way?
it. Beg your pardon?
Blended in what way? Like what do you mean by blended? Because as far as I'm aware, is pretty much exclusively vegetable oils being infused into these various foods.
A blended intervention of linoleic acid, of omega-6 and omega-3 fats.
Yeah, but omega-3s from where?
From vegetable oils.
Yeah, so the debates on vegetable oils, I think the fact that they contain some ALA, like soybean oil, for example, doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden irrelevant to what we're talking about, unless you hold the position that soybean oil is healthy on the net.
I don't hold that position.
Yeah, so it shouldn't matter then if there's some ALA in there, right? I want to clarify your position on LA veterans first before we move on to Lyon Diet. Just because, so if they showed a benefit with oils like soybean and other similar oils that, yeah, they contain some ALA, but they're high in linoleic acid, would you agree that that is overall beneficial?
That's what the studies show.
Yeah, so you agree that the vegetable oils used in LA veterans were beneficial then for the the outcomes of interest?
Slightly beneficial, yes.
Okay, cool. But with LA veterans, I'm confused as to what outcome specifically that was. Because if we look at, I could always share my screen too, but if we look at, say, aggregate of ischemic heart disease, acute MI, and acute cerebral infarction, we have a 36% reduction in risk, and it's statistically significant.
Slightly beneficial, yes.
For fatal atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, 0.67. So yeah, again, a 33% reduction in risk, statistically significant.
Slightly beneficial, yes.
For all-cause mortality, again, 35% reduction in risk, statistically significant. These are substantial.
Slightly beneficial, yes.
It's almost, what outcome was chosen for this figure here?
What outcome was chosen for this figure?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense based on the data that I have here.
So what's your point here, Matt?
Well, no, so my point is, like I don't know what outcome that is, but when I'm looking at ischemic heart disease, acute MI, and cerebral infarction as a combined endpoint, substantial reduction in risk. Fatal atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, substantial reduction in risk. All-cause mortality, substantial reduction in risk. To say that there's just a slight benefit, non-statistically significant benefit based on this figure, I'm just wondering, what is that looking at? Because it's not actually concordant with what I'm seeing here, and I can share my screen and go over this stuff too, no problem. From the LA Veterans paper itself. According to these results, would you not take the position that for cardiovascular outcomes, it was absolutely beneficial to have vegetable oils in the place of saturated fats?
It showed a small benefit, a very small benefit.
A 35% reduction in risk of all-cause mortality and a 33% reduction in risk of fatal atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is a small benefit?
Well, it also showed a large increase in cancer in the intervention group.
I'll read that out again. It is more reasonable to believe that seed oils are beneficial rather than harmful for coronary heart disease risk. But
do you agree for the cardiovascular outcomes there is benefit and substantial benefit at that?
I don't agree that you can just slice and dice a study like that without some consideration over the right.
They saw striking benefit across the board for cardiovascular outcomes and all-cause mortality.
They saw a fairly small effect, not a striking benefit.
So, what is it? You think a 35% reduction in risk in all-cause mortality, a 33% reduction in risk of fatal atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is small? Are you saying, and I just want to, a simple yes or no is fine too, but you're saying a 33% reduction in risk of fatal ASCVD or a 35% reduction in risk of all-cause mortality is a small reduction?
We have 3 studies in this group.
That's not my question.
We have DART, LA plus ALA, which showed a
That's
HR.
Not the question.
Yeah, it is. It is the question.
I just want to know, in your view, is a 35% reduction in risk in all-cause mortality and a 33% reduction in risk of fatal ASCVD considered a small reduction? That's just what I want to know. Regardless of everything else outside of that, I just want to know the answer to that question.
In cardiovascular disease, yes, it's a small reduction. It's a large relative risk. It is a small reduction in a small absolute risk of death.
Okay.
Right? So Lyon Diet Heart is the strongest heart disease prevention trial of any intervention that I'm aware of. But also, why does the one trial that reduces it show the biggest benefit of any of these trials? It is a small reduction in a small absolute risk of death. It is a small reduction in a small absolute risk of death. But also, why does the one trial that reduces it show the biggest benefit of any of these trials? It is a small reduction in a small absolute risk of death. Small reduction, small biggest benefit of any of these trials. Biggest benefit of any of these trials. Small biggest 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 small.
Dude,
fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,